Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome. It's been a few weeks.
Oh,
Somehow or other, Mindel and I were a little tied up. We had first the bris in Palo Alto, which was very beautiful. Thank you. And then
And what's the baby's name?
the baby's name is Nehemiah Or.
Nice.
Nehemiah for his grandfather, Mindel's father was Nehemiah. And Or, my son said that the night before the bris, they still hadn't decided what the middle name was going to be. And they tried out name after name. And when he said Nehemiah Or, the baby perked up. He said, that's the baby's name. So he's Nehemiah Or. He already has a leaf out on the tree of life out there. And then we did the cruise. And then last Tuesday we were busy, right? We couldn't make it, but we're here today, and we're going to be doing we're going to skip a little bit because the next few pages, if we continued, are they're interesting, but they're more or less the rules of evidence, and I wanted to get into some more of the cases. So this is the time, Marcia. Oh, it's a little commotion. What's going on out there? I hear a little. Oh, what's happened?
There's money on the floor.
There's money on the floor. Oh gosh. No, don't do it.
No?
No, you put it.
Okay, we'll have
You
to
could
do
drop
that
it
again. Okay.
Okay, drop
Oh,
it.
let's
Drop
wait
the
for
money.
rest of them to
So you have to drop it now.
Marcia, drop it.
Well, what's going on here? There's a horse in the classroom. What's happening here?
Oh, look.
Oh, look at that. It's a $50 bill. I got a $50 bill.
Wait a minute, that's mine.
Excuse me, but I found it.
But I pointed it out to you.
So what? I have it in my hand. It's mine now.
Oh, so now what are we going to do? So first of all, we have to settle this. We're the judges. It's our court, and first we have to call these two people up and find out what is their claim, because it was a little confusing actually what took place. So please come up, identify yourselves, and tell us what actually has taken place. Bring the 50 with you, right? That's right.
She was responsible for it.
Right.
Okay, I'm Carolyn Lanick, the horse rider. My horse and I were out taking a ride, and my
I
friend
was
did,
walking along, keeping her company while she was writing.
Yeah, but I said, look.
You said, look, but so what? I went and I got it. No, I'm the person who picked it up. I have it in my hand.
Well, I would have picked it up
What
if
did
I
they
wasn't
say?
on the horse.
Possession is 9/10 the law or some kind of thing like that, right? It's mine. I found it.
Okay, so what do we think? What do we think should be happening in this case?
Just keep witnesses first.
Okay, so let's talk about what you ladies can sit down. We'll settle the case, and then we'll decide what to do with the money. Meanwhile, so if you remember, we've been talking about disputed property, right? So the first case, what was the first case that we started out with? Was Shnayim Ochazim, right? Shnayim Ochazim. Right, and that was where you had Fran and Miriam were holding onto the sweater, right? And their claim was each one of them said that they found it and belonged to them, and we had to decide what to do. So what did we wind up doing in the end, Rita? We decided that that they had to each swear that they owned no less than half of it, and then we divided it, right? Because at that point they were both making a claim. There was no doubt about on the part of either one of them. They were sure what was happening, and there was no witnesses. We established that there was no owner because we went through the process looking for some sort of mark on it and so on. But in the end, it had to go, these two people had some sort of a claim to it, and we decided that we divided. That was the first case. The second case was the situation with the bull and the cow and the dead calf, right? In that case, you had a cow in the pen, and there was a bull in the same pen. And in the morning, we found the cow was gored, dead, and there was a calf, newborn calf on the ground next to the cow, and the calf was dead too. So in that case, we didn't know what actually took place, because it happened overnight, right? We knew that the cow was killed by the bull because they were the only two in there, so that was okay. So we knew that the owner of the bull had to pay for the damage killing the cow. But what about the calf, right? What's the issue with the calf, Esther? So the issue with the calf is, when did the calf die? Because if the calf died while it was still unborn, then it was considered to be part of the cow, and the bull, by virtue of the fact that the bull killed the cow, it also killed the calf, and therefore the owner of the bull had to pay for the dead cow and the dead calf. But suppose the calf was born prior to the goring, and then you know, as happens sometimes, babies are born and then they die, right? So in that case, the bull can't be held responsible for the death of the calf, because the calf was born before the bull gored the cow. And so in that case, what we did was we basically divided it, because we couldn't establish what the facts were. So the owner of the bull paid for the damage to the cow, and then half of what he would have had to pay, or she would have had to pay, for the calf, right? The third case was the storekeeper, the chenbani, right? That was the one.
It was Kate.
That was Kate, right. So that was Kate and Todd. So what happened there, Kate was the storekeeper, and Todd is our landscaper. He has a number of people working on our property, and he has several properties that he takes care of in the area. And Friday afternoon, everybody wants to get paid at the same time. But Todd can't be in Boca and in Deerfield and in Boynton all at the same time. So what he did was, he asked Kate to pay the employees, that they all come into the store. She would pay them, and she was glad because they bought lottery tickets, they bought cigarettes, so she's happy to have them come in. But still in all, she advanced the money to pay all these workers. Now comes Monday morning, and one of the workers comes to Todd and says, Todd, I didn't get paid. What do you mean you didn't get paid? Kate was supposed to pay you. She didn't pay me. So Todd goes to Kate, and Kate says,
Okay, I paid you.
I paid him. So now, what's going to happen in that case?
He's gotta pay again.
He's got to pay again. So in the end, Todd has to pay Todd has no claim against Kate, and he has to pay the worker, because Kate can say to Todd, I don't know you're a worker, I have nothing to do with him. You asked me to do something for you, I did it. The worker says, listen, she's a nice lady, but I don't know anything about her. I know I worked for you, and you got to pay me. So now Todd has to wind up paying both. Okay. Then we had the case of Marilyn and the hat, right? Where two people wanted to buy the same item, and had to decide who actually had the right. So now, the case that we have right now is a situation where you have property that is a found item, and two people are claiming it. So we know what happened. We saw it for ourselves. We know what happened. Now we have to decide who gets to keep it. Okay, and so the sheet that you have there is going to bring us to another Gemara from a different, actually a Mishnah, or a different location.
Was it found in anybody's property, or was it?
It was
just
found in the street, let's
in
say.
the street?
Right. So nobody has a claim to it other than the person who found it. Kate, if you don't mind to get me one too.
I say that it belongs to me, because just seeing something is not ownership.
Kate, would you get me one too? Thank you. Okay, so let's examine what actually is taking place. So the Mishnah that we're going to work on is on page 9b2. And as I said, we're skipping because we're going to get to different cases. So we're... So the Mishnah says, if I got it 9b2, it's like in the middle of the book, the English part. 9b2. And if you're using the Hebrew part, it's Pesach Beis, the Mishnah, and I marked where the Mishnah is located on the page.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. We're only in chapter 1. but it's the Mishnah on 9b2. Okay? So in the English part, on the top corner of the page, it'll say 9b2, 9b1, 9b2, 9b3. This is 9b2. And if you're using the Hebrew part, it's Tes Amud Beis, 9b basically. Okay? So here's what the Mishnah says. Someone was riding on an animal. A behema is a domesticated animal, so it could be a cow, it could be an ox, it could be a horse. So someone is riding on, and I couldn't get a cow like that, so we got the horse. Somebody's riding on a horse, right? And this person saw a found item, right? So in our case, it was a $50 bill. And he says to his friend, or she said to her fellow, right? So Shane, you said to Marilyn. Marilyn said to you, right? Said to you, said to her, Tanoli, give it to me, right? So Marilyn said, oh, look, picked it up and give it to me, right? So what happened? What happened to Tola? So she did pick it up, but then she went to put it in her pocket, right? And she says, I have taken possession of it. So that word, zachisi, that's an important word for us to know. And the root of that is zayin chaf hey, zacha, means to take possession, take ownership of something. And in order to understand our case, we're going to go to another situation where a person is claiming something for the benefit of someone else. Because remember, we learned, how do I take possession of a movable object? Right? You guys remember? How do you do it? If I want to give Kate this pen, how would I do it? You move it, right? So Jill, you're going to get the pen. But in other words, if something is a movable object, in order to take ownership of it, you need to do something. You need to lift it up, pull it if it's an animal or something. So we talked about Marilyn's horse, right, a couple of weeks ago. So by leading that horse or riding on the horse, I take ownership of it. But suppose I want to take ownership of something for the benefit of another person. Okay, so why would I want to do that? So I don't know, suppose I have something that's very valuable that I want to give to my daughter, for example, who happens to be here today. And so I ask Eva to, let's say I have a bracelet and I want Becky to have it. So I ask Eva, and Becky's not here right now, she's coming for Pesach, and I'm not going to be here the day that she arrives, Eva will be, and I ask Eva to take ownership of the bracelet for the benefit of Becky. Eva doesn't become the owner, because as much as I like Eva, it's a very nice bracelet, and I don't want to think that during this interim she may decide that, maybe she doesn't want to give it to Becky, whatever it is. So she takes ownership of it for the benefit of Becky. So we actually had a case like this in Elizabeth, because we had a young man who read the Torah every week while he was going to YU. Now he's an oral surgeon, whatever, but we didn't pay for that because we had similar situation. We didn't pay members, but we wanted to recognize that this young man had done such an important job for us. And so Rabbi Tice went out and bought him a very nice set of the full set of Gemara, and wanted to present it to him on Shabbos in front of the whole shul. Problem is, you're not allowed to give a gift on Shabbos, because that's like doing business. So now how would we get this set of Gemaras to Michael, Michael Maltz, we wanted to give it to him? So what Rabbi Tice did was he had Michael's father accept it prior to Shabbos for the benefit of Michael. Okay, so the father never owned it, he took possession for Michael's benefit. Okay, that's called zechia, zacha, zechia. He took ownership for the benefit of somebody else. Okay, so here's the case that we're going to reference. It's on page 52. This one handout, and it's talking about a situation that we're harvesting our crops, and when you do harvest the crop, there are three types of gifts, so to say, that belong to the poor people. They're called leket, shikha, and peah. Leket means anything that drops, let's say the farmers, the workers are cutting the wheat, whatever they do to harvest the wheat, and some of the stalks fall on the ground. And people come along behind them and they are doing what's called gleaning, right? Gleaning, right? Who's the most famous gleaner? Ruth. Okay. So she was gleaning. She was following behind Boaz's workers and she was gleaning. So that's called leket. Shikha is once they've already harvested, they've made it into bundles, they packed everything up on the trucks and they went away, and a few bundles got left behind. They forgot them. That's lishkoach, to forget. That's called shikha. So that also goes to the poor. And the third one is peah. Peah means a corner, right? People wear the payas on the corners. So a peah is a corner, and when you harvest your field, you're supposed to leave over a corner, deliberately leave over a corner for the benefit of the poor. Okay?
In
So
the widow,
what?
in the widow.
If she's a poor widow, if her husband left her a lot of life insurance, she's not eligible, right? But if you have a case of poor people, they're entitled to it, and that's important because you have to be poor to get this. So here you go. Misha lokat hasapeya. So now you have a person who he's observing the process of harvesting the grain, and he picked up this peah. He picked up the grain that was in the corner of the field. For Amar, and he said, listen to what he said, Harei zu leish ploni ani. He's not a poor person or a poor widow, but he knows somebody else who is poor and does qualify for being able to take this peah. So he says, I'm going to take hold of it for the benefit of this other person who's a poor person. So can we do that? Well, Rabbi Eliezer Amar Zachalo. Rabbi Eliezer says, yes. So in that case, the rider could say to the person who's walking, take it for my benefit, right?
If they're poor.
No, this is the concept of zechia. So in the case of Michael Maltz and the Gemaras, he wasn't poor, and he's certainly not poor now. But the point was that his father took ownership of it for his benefit. So in our case, so what Marilyn wanted you to do was to take ownership of it for her. Okay? So according to Rabbi Eliezer, that's okay. You could do that. Chachamim Omrim, Chachamim said no, not so. They say you can't do that. You can't take possession of something for the benefit of a third party if you yourself are not eligible. In other words, if that wasn't a question.
What makes you
No, that makes sense.
What makes you eligible is if you are poor yourself, and we're gonna get into that. In other words, if you have a situation where I'm watching, I don't know, who can I pick on right now? I'm watching Ada. She hasn't been here yet. So Ada is a farmer, and she has a grain field, and I'm watching her workers harvest. And I say, you know what? I know a certain person who's a poor person, and he lives in the village, and I want to make sure that he has, grain, wheat that he can make flour for matzahs and everything. So I'm going to go and I'm going to take the grain that's in the peah of Ada's field for the benefit of that person. Thank God I don't qualify. And can I do that? Can I take ownership of it for somebody else who's a poor person? So Rabbi Eliezer says I can. Chachamim say no. If you yourself are not eligible, you can't do it for the benefit of someone who is. Right? Even though I'm not really taking ownership of it for myself at all, I'm doing it for the benefit of somebody else. But if I don't qualify as being in that impoverished state, I can't do it.
How would that apply in something that's current? How would something like this apply to anything that we can, resonate now?
Okay, so talk about our case that took place right now. So what happened? So what Marilyn wanted to take place was that not that Shana owns it and gives it to her as a gift. She wanted Shana to take ownership of it for her benefit. Mm-hmm. In other words, never to own it herself. Okay, and Shana said, "No, I picked it up. I'm gonna take it." Right. So here's another case, and we have to figure out what is the ruling. And so now getting back to our own Mishnah. right? Because we tried to apply the concept that we learned over there to what's happening here.
Well, I think part of the difference is the $50 could be divided in half, as opposed to a sweater or the cow or something else. So both claiming that they. if they-
That would be true if their claim was the same claim, but their claim was not the same claim. In other words, in this case, they can't both be right. In the case of the sweater, they both could be right. It's possible that they both picked it up at the same time, and therefore the only thing we can do is divide it. In this case, it's only one of them can be right, and that person gets, I think Sheila,
Yeah, well, I'm wondering, because when the sweater thing came up, it also came up with, well, what if someone, doesn't really need another sweater and the other one does, and that didn't play into it?
no.
Yeah.
No, because
Like, why is it different?
okay, so we're gonna get into that. And that's an important factor in this case, because the question over there is, and how does it get resolved, is that we have a concept called migo. Migo means since. So Rabbi Eliezer says, since this person who claimed the property for another person, since that person could make himself poor, right? If I wanted to, I could stand up in front of a court of 3 people. Maybe I don't even have to do that, and I could declare all my property ownerless, right? And now I'm a poor man. And now that I'm a poor man, I'm eligible to take hold of that property because I'm eligible now, right? Right? If I say everything that I have, I am going to give to Torah Or for the next building fund, right? I can do something like that. And my wife is not smiling right now, but the point is I could do it and I can make myself poor, and if I can make myself poor now
you're eligible.
now I'm eligible.
For an institution.
But the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Eliezer say that's true, but this concept of since can only go one level. You can't have 2, because in this case, what I'm doing, if I say I want to take possession of it for the benefit of this third person, this poor person, I need to have 2 sinces. The first one is since I could make myself poor, and then since I could give it to somebody else, therefore I can pass it through. And the rabbi said, no, 1 since is enough. 2 sinces you can't do, and therefore it can't work. Okay.
So I guess I don't see that our case here involves Lechet, Shicha, and Peh, because those are things that are specifically defined. And this is just something that was found on the road somewhere, somebody.
Oh, very good, very good. And so let's go on a little bit, and we'll see what the Gemara has to say about that. So we said that the other person picked it up, right? And she said it's mine, right? So she gets to keep it. Next case in the same Mishnah, it says Im Misha Nasna Lo. So let's say when you picked it up, you handed it to Marilyn, and then you said, you know what, I picked it up, it should be mine. What happens then? So the Mishnah says, and she says, Omar Aniza Chisi Batachila, and I picked it up, and therefore it should be mine, Lo Amar Klum. That's a meaningless statement. Because now you've already given it to her, so the fact that you picked it up and took ownership of it is immaterial. Okay? So let's see what the Gemara says. So the Gemara says, Tanan Hasam, we learned there, which is what we just talked about, the Gemara, the Mishnah and Peah. By the way, Peah is one of the Masechtas that has no Gemara, it's only Mishnah. So, and that's interesting because there's a very big movement around the world learning Daf Yomi. But if you only learn Daf Yomi and you don't learn Mishnah Yomi, you'll miss out on those Mishnahs that don't have Gemara. So that's why a few years ago I started Mishnah Yomis here too.
What's the difference between Mishnah and Gemara?
Okay, so the Mishnah, if you remember, is the first time that they wrote something down. That was done in the early part of the Common Era, right? The first couple hundred years. That was that was done, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, and it was finalized by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi,
Big guys,
what?
the big guys.
The big guy, right. He was called Rebbe. He finished the Mishnah. It was written in Eretz Yisrael, it was written in Hebrew. The Gemara was from like the year 200 to 500, and that was the commentary on the Mishnah. That's called the Gemara. So the Mishnah is, the Gemara cannot argue with the Mishnah is more authoritative. So what happens is they're trying to understand what was the rationale. Why did one say this and one say that? And they try to understand it. So in our case, we have a Mishnah that's commenting on that we're bringing to comment on another Mishnah. So let's see what our Gemara is going to say about all that.
So the Mishnah is the commentary on the Gemara.
No, the Gemara is a commentary on the Mishnah. Not exactly, it's an expansion of the Gemara. So Rashi is a commentary. The Gemara is not a commentary, but it's an expansion on the Mishnah. Okay. So Tananhas, and we learned there, which is what we learned. That's in Peah. Misha likate es a Peah. Somebody who picked up this Peah, this produce that's in the corner of the field. V'amar harei zu leploni, and he says it's for this other party, right? Ploni oni, this poor person. Rabbi Eliezer merzachalo. Rabbi Eliezer says that this action that he took is valid. It actually works, right? Chachamim say no. You picked it up. You give it now. The first poor person that comes along, you give it to that person. You had no right to claim it for the benefit of this other person who's not here, this other poor person. You had no right to do that. Why not? Because you're not poor yourself. You don't qualify, and according to the rabbis, you can't do two levels of saying sin. Since I could have done this. Yes, Fran.
Could someone make that person a shaliach or no?
So that's a good question. Whether the ani, the poor person, could make you a shaliach to claim it for him, I'm not sure about that.
Was Eva a shliach?
Pardon?
Was Eva a shliach for the bracelet?
No. In the case of the bracelet, she's not a shaliach. She actually takes ownership for the benefit of the third person, and she can do that. She can do that in the same way as Michael's father took ownership of the Gemaras for the benefit of his son. He never really owned it himself, but by virtue of the fact that he accepted, because there's a concept of zachin lo la'adam shelo b'fanav. You can do something which is beneficial for a person, even if the person's not here. You can't do something detrimental to a person. Like you can't claim that somebody owes money to a third party if you don't know anything about that. You're not a witness to it. You can't do something to harm somebody, but you can do something to benefit someone without them being here. Ms. Marilyn?
Is Eva a bank?
No, Eva's not a bank. Eva is another Jew. Her kids might think that she, but no.
But I mean, if you take something to a bank, it's a holding place until.
Okay, so what is the role of the bank? What does the bank actually do?
But the bank doesn't give.
Does the bank take possession of the property? They probably do, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
They do, and then they lend it out to somebody else, right? I mean, years ago, that's what used to happen, right? My mother taught me, you put your money in the bank, you get 3% interest.
They
And
use it and then they.
what?
Today you get 3% interest.
Well, it's back now, but it was their savings and loan, right? So we, put that money in the bank, make 3% interest, and then when you go to buy a house, they would lend you the money for mortgages, because savings banks used to give mortgages, and the bank would charge you 4.5% or 5 or 6% interest, and that was what they made. That was the spread between what they paid and what they. So the bank actually did take possession of the money, didn't they? Because they could lend it out.
Is Eva the safety deposit box for the bank?
Well, whatever Eva does with it, she never owns it.
That's a temporary. In other words, she's the head safety deposit box. You give your daughter the key, and she picks it up.
Okay, maybe you can make such
I'm
an
trying to
analogy, but the
relate
point is
to
that she
my-
never owned it herself. Okay, so, and there's no issue of her needing to take ownership of something that only certain people can hold ownership of, because that's not the question of the poor person. It's just simply for my convenience. It makes it easier for me. I'm not going to be here when Becky lands. I want her to be able to get it right away because it's going to be a nice surprise for her. And I can't do it, but I know Eva's going to be there, so Eva takes care of it for me. Yes, ma'am.
Getting back to what you were talking about, the poor people,
Right.
why the person cannot be designated for somebody else, for Plony. There may be a lot of poor people around
Right.
that wanna pick up, and then someone comes, oh, but I know somebody who's poor. Hey, give priority to people that are here, not for a third party.
Right, that's exactly what the Chachamim, the sages,
Right.
that's what they say, it's those who are here
Right.
right now, not
Right.
somebody else. And
Right.
if the person taking possession of it was himself a poor person,
That's something else.
that's something else. He can take possession and he can give it to whoever he wants to give it to, once he owns it. But the point is that somebody who's not poor can't take possession of something else to the detriment of, that's another issue, because someone else is gonna be harmed.
Right.
Right? If there are 2 or 3 poor people standing here and I rush in there before him, I'm harming them for the benefit of somebody who's not even here, and I myself have no right to take that property, right? So that doesn't work, okay? So let's go on. So let's try to understand what's actually happening. So Omar Ula, Omar of Yeshua ben Levi. So Ula, who was an Amora, right? And he's saying in the name of Yeshua ben Levi, Machlokes Maser La'ani, Me'ashir La'ani. The difference of opinion, the dispute that we have is in a case of a rich man, and it doesn't mean that he's a billionaire. It means that he does not qualify to be poor. So whatever that means, and the Gemara actually does define what it means to be poor, how much you need to possess in order to not be considered poor. But that's for another time. But so it's the difference of opinion is a case where it's a rich person, so to say, or non-poor benefiting a poor person, right? The Rabbi Eliezer Savar, Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, Migo di boy mafkir nechase v'havi ani. So since he could give away all of his property or declare his property ownerless, then he becomes a poor person himself. Rabbi Eliezer says he could do that, right? We all could do that if we wanted to. You can always do that. Make yourself poor. Says v'chazi lei, and then it's fitting for him. Then he qualifies. So now too, since even though he didn't do that, but he could have done it, so why not say since he could have done it, assume that he would have, and therefore he can take possession for the benefit of somebody else. Umiga de zachal and and since he can take possession for his own benefit, in that case, so he can also do it for the sake of his friend, right? That's what Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is. Rabbanan Savri, but the rabbis, they're the majority, they say no. We can say since one time. We can't say it's like a double negative, Marilyn, right? You know, one is enough. You can't make 2 arguments the same way. So you can't say since twice. So trei migo lo amrina. Don't say 2. Avame ani lo ani. But from one poor man to another poor man, or a poor woman to another poor woman, whether it's a poor widow or she's not a widow, it doesn't matter. But in that case, Divrei Kol Zachalo, everybody agrees that poor widow could take possession for another poor widow, because if she wanted to, she could keep it herself. So you can't say that she's harming the other poor that are here, because she has every right to it just like they do. And once she picks it up, she can do with it what she wants now. So if she wants to take ownership for the benefit of someone else, she can do it, because she could take it for herself. Yes, Rita?
Can she take a double portion, one for herself and one for the other poor person?
Well, there's no limit to how much you can take and pay it. If you get there quickly and you gather it all up, you can take it all.
So you're allowed to share it, as long as you take it for yourself.
Well, once you can do whatever you want with it, but there's no limit. You can't say that any one particular poor person can't take more than X, whatever that number is, as opposed to maaser, tithing, right? So we're supposed to give a tenth of our property or a tenth of our earnings, right? And how that all works, but so that's a different situation. Paya, there's really no set standard as to how big the paya has to be, and then how much each individual could take.
So there's no limit actually on payer.
Well, you can't make your whole field into paya, because then they're not paid.
No, but I'm saying as much as you can gather, then that. If you bring not a vehicle, but if you bring some kind of a card or something, can you just pile it in there?
Sure, why not? Yeah. And the other poor people really have no complaint to you. They may not like what you've done,
Yeah.
but they have no legal claim to what you've already taken, okay? So now you have the situation where, Marilyn?
Again, it doesn't work for me. The poor person that gathered it all has now become rich,
Yeah.
and
Right,
poor people are starving.
So that's an issue. So if that person is no longer considered poor, he's gotta stop now.
So
Because
he
he's not,
really can't
because he's
take it
no,
all.
because he's no longer eligible. Right. Fran?
Isn't that what we say that in the morning brachas, don't we? We say in the morning brachas about there's no limit to, there's things that are no limit, right? And one of them is gathering.
That's right. If you take a look in the siddur, it says Elo Dvarm She'elo Hamshir, Hapeya V'Bikurin, right? And one of them is respect for your parents, right? And all that. So, but pay is one of those things that there's no standard. There's no,
We're talking about doing it,
what?
right? We're talking about what you would be, not the person taking it.
Right, so we're talking about the farmer. There's no limit. If the farmer wants to designate a larger portion, he can't designate the whole field because it's not pay anymore, because now it's the whole thing. But you can do more or less. Ms. Fran?
The problem that I have with that is like a poor person who is disabled and can't collect would have no way of ever getting it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's.
But another poor person is not gonna do it for them because they need it for themselves.
No, she could designate.
I hear you.
You can't designate someone
To go get it for her.
that's not.
Or poor.
Well, so let's say you have the poor person who is disabled and they have a friend who is not physically challenged, right?
Right.
So that person could say, you know what, I'm gonna pick up for you and I'm gonna pick up for me too. And I'm gonna, by doing that, I won't become rich, because I'll be dividing with you, and we're both going to be able to share it. And I could do that because I'm also a poor man.
But he can't designate to a rich person,
No, because a rich person's not eligible to get the
but
pay.
even though he's being his designated picker-upper.
No, but what he could do actually, is take ownership of it, not as a zechia for somebody else, but as a kinyan, as an acquisition for himself. He's eligible, then he can give it away to whoever he wants, or sell it, or whatever he wants to. Once he's eligible to take possession of it because he qualifies by his income level or his assets or whatever it is, now he owns it. Now it's his. He does it whatever he wants with it, and he can give it or sell it or whatever to anybody he wants to, because he had the legal right to take it. Okay, Esther?
Aren't you gonna end up with the same situation as we started off with, when like two people come at the same time, and they are all, well, I got it here first, and this is mine, are we gonna get into that kind of situation?
With the horse and ride, horse and.
With the payer, yeah.
So, well, the paya itself, hopefully people don't, trample one another trying to get to it. Hopefully they act peacefully. What? But our case with the horse and with the walker. By the way, I do want that 50 back. But in that case, we're going to get deeper into it. We're going to try to figure how can we solve this. So the reason we brought in pay is because that was a case of a person taking possession for the benefit of a third party. Because what Marilyn is saying is, when you picked it up, you didn't pick it up for yourself. You picked it up for me because I asked you to. Right? You had no intention of taking that for you. Now you've got it in your hand. You're thinking what I could do with that $50. You suddenly changed your mind. Right? That's what Marilyn is going to say. Jill?
Does the fact that the person who was riding the horse said to the person walking, hey, look at that,
Right?
does that imply that
Free for all?
you would expect, she saw it, but she's pointing it out to her, who's
Right.
closer to the ground?
Well, so that's a question. When Marilyn is pointing it out to her, is Marilyn saying, look at that, that'll be nice, it'll be good if you had that $50, you could use it, or is she saying, hey, look at that, I want that, pick it up for me.
Well, it didn't
So-
sound like when Marilyn said it, like she was saying, hey, it would be good if you took that $50.
Right, but if somebody says, hey, look,
Right.
it implies, yeah, look at it, bend down and pick it up.
Right, so it seems, it's clear from the language that's not what Marilyn meant. She meant, I see that that 50, pick it up for me, please.
Well, she said, give it to me.
Give it to me.
Oh,
Right,
that was like
right.
after.
She said,
Yeah.
no, she said to me, give it to me.
Right, so it's clear,
She said it more nicely.
Please.
but it's clear that Marilyn wanted that 50. And Marilyn felt that by asking Shana to pick it up, she was actually taking ownership of it, because what Shana was doing is not taking ownership herself, she was picking it up for the benefit of Marilyn.
So the fact that somebody sees something first doesn't play into it.
Well, that's the question.
That
That's
was-
that's just exactly what is our question. The fact that she sees it, does that accomplish anything? Or the person picking it up? And then what we're gonna get into is what was the intention of the person picking it up? When she picked it up, was she intending to take it for herself at that point? Or did she change her mind? So when first Marilyn said pick it up, she said, okay, I'll pick it up for you. Then she said, hey, well, right? Like Cyrano de Bergerac, right? And what's his name, Roxanne and whatever, that he wanted her for himself, or, just because you're doing something for a third party doesn't mean that you didn't want it yourself, right? So here you go. Let's go a little bit further, because we have a very little bit of time left. So, in the case of a poor man for a poor man, he can do that. He can, since he can take it for himself, he could also take it for the benefit of another person. So Amalei Rav Nachman Ula. So now Rav Nachman doesn't agree with Ula's interpretation. He says, "V'lema mar me ani la'ani machlokas." He said, "No, I'm not so sure that a case of one poor person for another poor person is necessarily settled discussion. It could be that there is a difference of opinion on that case. Why? Because he said, "Deha mitzia hakol aniyim etzla." Oh, when it comes to a mitzia, we're all poor. Because that 50 does not belong to you, doesn't belong to Marsha who dropped it. In related to that 50, we're all poor. We all have the equal right to that. So basically what he's saying is the issue of poverty doesn't come into play. So, so just like the one poor person could take it for the benefit of another poor person, so too in this case, the person who's picking it up can claim it for the benefit of somebody else, can take ownership for the other person. So if her intention originally was to pick it up for the benefit of the other person, it is the property of that other person, right? Because we're both poor when it comes to, I know she has to catch a bus. We're both poor when it comes to this mitzia, says Rav Nachman, right? Utanan, and we learned in our Mishnah, our case, hayarochev al gabe behema, bara'asa mitzia. Somebody's riding, right? Marilyn is riding on her horse, and she sees this found object, says to her friend, Amar lachavero, he says to the person to pick it up for them, and then the person picks it up, Amar Natola, I picked it up, Ani zachisiba, and I'm, okay? She says, I picked it up, it belongs to me, right? So therefore, the case seems to be now, according to what Rav Nachman is saying, is that her original intention was to take it for herself. She never intended to give it to Marilyn. Just Marilyn saw it, she saw it too. And when Marilyn said pick it up, she was disregarding that statement. That had nothing, that had nothing to do with her. She was picking it up because she wanted it, right?
Right.
Right? And therefore what? Therefore, according to Rav Nachman, she could keep it, right? He's Iyamar Bishlomo. If you're going to say that's true, Me'ani lo'ani machlokas, but if you say that a case of two poor people, one claiming for the benefit of the third person, that there's a difference of opinion now whether they can do that. So in that case, Masnisa Nami, our Mishnah, Mani, so who is it that is the author of our Mishnah? Because our Mishnah has no author, right? No author, there's no attribution in the Mishnah. And so we're going to try to find out next time who's the author of our Mishnah, why does that matter, and how are we going to decide what happens with my
What happened? I come by
Oh, she's doing it in front of witnesses, look at this.
Returning the money.
Thank you.
Did anybody find it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Rita.
I said, what happens if I come by and say, I think I lost a $50 bill someplace around here, did anybody find it?
Oh, okay, so then, so that's a perfect case, where if you say that you lost the 50, and somebody picked it up, they would realize that it's yours, and they should return it to you. Obviously they should.
But doesn't the obligation to return a lost object, if you find something, shouldn't you ask around, did anybody lose a piece of currency?
That actually happened to my little brother when he was about 4 years old. He found a $50 bill in Frankie's Market in Hackensack, New Jersey, a big flea market, and he said to my grandmother, "Bubby, I found a 50."
And everybody says, it's mine.
Exactly. My
No,
grandmother was
but
so
Does
angry.
the finder have any obligation?
So he
to
can
ask
say,
this
he can say what you said. I found something.
stuff? Right, you don't do it.
I found something. Did anybody lose anything? And then people are going to come and they'll say that if somebody can say specifically, this is what I lost,
Right.
then you're obligated to give it back.
Isn't that only the area where
public
you
domain.
So Simone, how can you, on a dollar, on a bill,
Well, so if you identified what was the denomination that you lost, so it seems like it would be your obligation to return it.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to stop the camera myself.